My name is Michael Maloney.
Dragonfly Wishes is a palliative care initiative in which wishes are granted for those during end-of-life care. By celebrating lives and dignifying the dying process, the goal of this project is to improve the end-of-life experience for all stakeholders.
The patient, the family and friends, the clinician, the healthcare providers, and the caregivers.
Introducing Granting a Wish for Mike Maloney.
Mike's Wish, a legacy project telling his story to you, his audience, center stage one last time.
Take a moment and think about someone close to you who has passed away. It can be anyone. Were there parts of themselves they left behind for you to remember? It could be anything. A piece of jewelry, a picture, a book, or a family heirloom. Or it could be something as simple as a conversation the two of you had about what was important to him or her. Intentional or not, we all leave behind these pieces of ourselves that others will remember us by. These are our memories. These mementos are our legacy. A diagnosis of a life-limiting illness often leads people to think about their legacy and what they're leaving behind, not just finances. Unfortunately, all too often, these thoughts stay as thoughts, and they aren't actually put into motion. East Haldimand Hospice wants to help make this happen.
I'm Catherine Stengel, Project Lead for Dragonfly Wishes, Volunteer Executive Director of East Haldimand Hospice, By the Willow Community, and Registered Nurse at Haldimand War Memorial Hospital. On September 2nd, 2021, I had the pleasure of caring for Mike while in hospital and asked him on that day if we, East Haldimand Hospice, could grant him a wish. Since I was aware of one of Mike's passions, directing and acting, I engaged in conversations about his work at the Dunnville Community Theatre. That meant much more to him than talking about his illness. I knew Mike. Not only was he my patient for the day, but I had the pleasure of directing a play where he was one of the lead actors back in 2013 called It Can Damage Your Health. Mike shared with me how much he loved being on stage, the many plays he directed and performed in, and especially his favorite called Thorn. He also shared that he knew a few years ago that in the last play he performed, it would be his last time being center stage due to his physical limitations. He really missed it. When I asked him how East Haldimand Hospice's project, the Dragonfly Wishes, could help, it was to grant the wish of being center stage once again. But as he thought, not possible. I explained that with the help of East Haldimand Hospice and the Dunnville Community Theatre, we could make that happen through a video interview. Mike could tell his story. We would bring the lights, cameras, and action to him, whether it be in his hospital room or outside. Mike's face lit up and he said, sure, that would be fun. Part of Mike's mission in this center stage video was to encourage the youth to share their talents through theater. Time was against us, though. Mike and I met several times over the next few days to talk, listen, and plan. We chatted that morning. He said he was sorry he wasn't up to the video interview. He wanted to share one last time with me his story about his favorite play, Thorn. He expressed how proud he was of the kids he directed in that play. I told Mike that I was sorry he did not have the opportunity to share his story to you, the audience, but told him that our team would do so on his behalf and would do it justice. He nodded his head in approval. I told him that we loved his wonderful deep voice, was honored to have directed him in It Can Damage Your Health, and that on behalf of the Dunnville Community Theatre, I wanted to thank him for all his work, volunteering, friendship, and mentoring. It was a pleasure caring for him, and that we would help pass on his legacy.
As promised, Mike, we are here to help tell your story as best we can. Starring Michael Maloney in Telling His Story. Center stage one more time. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, my name is Mike Maloney, and I'm retired from a job which saw me as a director of marketing and technical sales for a firm. And I've been retired now for about 5 years. I play Ray Higgins in the play.
Can you tell me a bit about your character?
Ray is a sometimes obnoxious, gregarious, poop disturber.
Are you anything like your character?
In a lot of ways, yes. Ray and I share a lot of characteristics that are the same. I enjoy laughing and I enjoy playing practical jokes, so manipulating people on stage is a lot of fun.
How long have you been a member of the Dunnville Community Theatre?
I have been with the DCT, I'm going to guess here, about 8 or 10 years. I took a couple of years off and started a program for teenagers called Theatre of Tomorrow, which is still running. But I found I missed it, so when I was offered the chance to come back and do another role, I thought, yeah, I should do this.
Mike was a person bent on challenging the me-centered culture, the prevailing culture that prioritizes satisfying self before directing attention to the common good. Despite his failing health, Mike was an inspiration as he dedicated his time to provide opportunities for people to express themselves and for observers to question the status quo. He directed Thorn, a theatrical play questioning the sanity of war in Afghanistan and Iraq at a time when most were celebrating the war and considered it unavoidable.
As a dream mentor for the Theatre of Tomorrow Working Group, Mike offered dream students an expanded world through plays like Security Blanket, which examined our shallow approach to security while ignoring the root causes. And Mind Shift, a play warning of the coming environmental and social collapse through climate change. We still remember fondly when Mike approached us to let us know that he was not sure if he was going to be alive when the next Dream Theatre of Tomorrow would go on stage later that year. He added that as long as we are okay with it, he was more than happy to lead on.
And leading he did, until the end, on his deathbed. He was comforted by the memories of his work that influenced positively and offered opportunities to so many. Rest in peace, Mike.
We miss you.
Good evening and welcome. A couple of housekeeping notes before we begin. Sometimes our lives are altered by things that we don't even see coming. Very often, our lives will only matter if we accept those changes. It's time for class. Joe Gates has taught American government here for 24 years. He's the kind of teacher that always thought he's done a good job of reaching his students. I want to help develop good citizens. It's a phrase he said many times. What that means to Joe Gates is about to become very clear. Good morning. Big roll here.
Shannon. Ginny. Keith. Yeah. Tracy. Keisha. Tom. And Roseanne. Okay. We'll open up our books to page 114, please. We were discussing the adoption of the Bill of Rights. Yeah, is that what we need? What's that?
Tom here has spent most of his life on the streets. He was taught to read by a homeless man, who also taught him how to use the library, stay safe, stay warm, and to question things that didn't make a lot of sense to him. Tom here has decided to change the world. Recently, a fire broke out in a small apartment building. Witnesses say a young man made 4 trips into that burning building, saving 3 children and an elderly man. On his 5th trip back into the building, the roof collapsed. Ultimately, the only thing the witnesses would all agree on was that he had worn a black leather jacket. On December 25th, Christmas Day, while traveling with a supply convoy 16 kilometers southwest of Baghdad, Lieutenant Sandy James and 6 of her fellow guardsmen were killed when their vehicles struck an improvised explosive device. In 1970, Joe Gates was a 21-year-old private with the Ohio National Guard. On May the 4th, 1970, his unit was called into active duty and sent to Kent State University campus in Kent, Ohio. Previously, the students had rioted and burnt down the ROTC building. This protest had been sparked by the admission of the Nixon administration that they had expanded the size and scope of the war in Vietnam and bombed neutral Cambodia. During that confrontation with the students, Private Gates fired 4 shots, along with dozens of his fellow guardsmen. 67 bullets were shot in 13 seconds. At the end of that, 13 students lay on the ground. 4 dead in Ohio. To this day, no one has ever admitted giving the order to fire.
My very first production with the Dunville Theatre was in 2007 in a play called Thorn, which was directed by Mike Maloney. I was new to DCT, and Mike was just wonderful to work with. He was a longtime member of the theatre, and I remember being really nervous about auditioning because I didn't know anybody there, including him. I think Mike picked up on that, and after I had read a few scenes during the audition, he came right up on stage and said to me, "So, where have you been hiding? You did great." I thought that was just so sweet. Mike believed Thorn was a very important play, and he was very excited that DCT was performing it. Thorn had a very large cast, made up of about 8 or 9 adults and a half-dozen kids from the high school. I'm sure it was pretty hard for him to direct both the adults and a bunch of high school kids all together, but I think Mike did a great job. The kids really loved being involved at the theatre, and I think Mike was a major part of that. I acted in a number of plays alongside Mike in the years following our production of Thorn. It was a lot of fun sharing the stage with him each and every time. Mike is certainly going to be missed by the Dunnville theater community, and it was a privilege to work and play on stage with him.
Hey, Lamar, did you hear that scientists have identified a food that can diminish a man's sex drive by 90%? They call it wedding cake.
Twister's touchdown on the edge of town. It's coming right at us. I've got the family going around back to the storm cellar. Y'all come on. But if anybody dies during a storm, I got dibs on taking their picture.
I couldn't sleep, and I had to bring you these to make up for the way I acted yesterday. I had a powerful reaction to you, likes of which I've only felt once before in my life. My ex. Now, I know you're having a real hard time right now, and I don't want to be another rough patch in your already miserable life. But it's hard not to be attracted to you. I mean, your skin's so pale and soft looking. You got two of the most expressive eyes, and believe me, I pay attention to that kind of shit. Anyway, I just hope when you look at these flowers, you'll think of me. How sorry I am.
Son, it's going to take a sight more than flowers to win my affection.
What are you doing here?
Listening to a man who doesn't know the first thing about women.
Okay, I want you to show me your best face of fear.
Of fear?
Fear.
You gotta go for it, son. You gotta live each day as if it was your last. Because one of these days you'll be right.
Welcome to our house, Hospitality House. Want to know where our local chefs go to get their bacon? They wouldn't give away their secret, but heck, we would. Everyone goes to Parmer's Pork Palace, owned by generations of Parmers specializing in pork. Turn on Interstate 42 north of Sweet Gum and look for the giant American flag made of sausages. That's Parmer's Pork Palace. And speaking of pork, we have our very own babe, CC Wyndham. Hey, CC, don't go baking my heart. I couldn't if I fried. I love this job.